So have you ever wanted to solo that giant campaign module that's just kind of been collecting dust on your shelf? Well, I'm here to say, yeah, dude, you totally can. Let's talk about how you can run published adventures solo using Mythic. Let's break it down. Hi, hello, everybody. I'm Turk, and welcome back to the Grouch Couch. Around here, we do all different kinds of weird TTRPG things, but today we're diving into Mythic Magazine number 3 to answer the big question. Can you run a published solo adventure, solo? And how the heck would that even work? Well, again, let's break it down. For our first little bit here, we're going to talk about how Mythic can meet your modules. Yes, so here's the deal. Mythic solo play usually puts you in this dance with an oracle, right? You're going to ask questions and it's going to answer those questions, and you're going to improv your way all through the chaos. But with published adventures, you already have this structure, right? You bought this book for its story, right? For its cool vibes and its dope narrative. So in this situation, Mythic is going to take a step back a little bit here, right? The adventure is going to give you the structure and the details, and Mythic is going to become the arbiter of events. Then the thing it's going to be that you ask whenever stuff does get a little bit weird. You're basically partnering here with the module, all right? Let it be the world and you be the spark that's going to be interacting with it, right? So let's talk about getting started with Mythic published adventures, right? And we're gonna move on to the Mythic Magazine number 3. And by the way, if you do want to pick up this magazine for yourself to be able to read it more thoroughly and check out all the cool stuff it has inside of it, you could use our Drive-Thru-RPG link down in the description, all right, to pick it up, and you could help support the show while doing so. We appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit about getting started here, all right? One of the main things it even says here in this Mythic Magazine that I completely agree with is that you should not overread your module, okay? And even as an example, if you picked up a module, read it all the way through and loved it and wanted to run it but never got to, you're gonna need to wait a good amount of time before you decide to play it solo, because you want those surprises to be there, right? So rule number 1 for this is do not overread it, okay? But here's how to start. Of course, you're gonna pick an adventure that excites you. You're gonna read the intro of that adventure, okay? You're gonna get the tone, you're gonna get the presence, you're gonna get the vibe. You could even read some of the introductory stuff, right? Like, you know, where are you starting and stuff like that. Then you're gonna stop. You do not want to read too far ahead. Seriously, this is like the meat and potatoes of this here. You cannot read your whole module book because then no work, all right? Because look, your goal here, all right, is not to simulate you being a GM again. And that's what that whole part of that book is for. Your goal here is to experience the story as a player, and it even says in here as a spectator. And I dig that, because you're not only watching what your character does in the thing as a spectator, so you're kind of seeing how your character interacts with that story, if that makes any sense to you. It does to me, and I think it's kind of a good way to run this. You are gonna know more than your character in this, but you're gonna have to act like you don't, right? You're gonna have to keep the surprises alive. You're gonna have to see how your character would react to these things happening. Does that make sense? So, as it even says here in the magazine, as you read the introductory sections, make sure you have your threads and characters list handy. Go ahead and write down any threads or characters you read about that seem important. With a published adventure, you are populating the lists with elements that are revealed to you before you begin playing. This helps prime Mythic set the tone and the atmosphere of the published adventure, because later you might roll on something like, oh, here's a random event or something that's happening, and you can actually roll on your threads list to see what might be happening here, and then you can refer back to the book more about that thread that you wrote down. So it's kind of like making things happen in the story randomly and adding this level of surprise. And I think it's very, very cool. It's a great idea. All right, now before we move on to another thing that they have in here, which I think is really handy dandy, we're going to talk a little bit about scaling the game, right? Because you are one dude versus a party of 6, okay? We're talking about one guy, one die here, right? That's me, but you know, you do whatever you do. Published adventures are built for a crew. You're solo. So you got to scale a little bit here, right? What you're going to do is you're going to scale your character up, maybe give them a few extra levels or magic items. So if the book, for example, says this is meant for 4 characters at level 3, maybe then you should just make a level 8 character, right? You're one character going through this whole story. It's going to make it make more sense. Or you can give yourself an extra magic magic item or two to make it, still work. However, whatever system you're playing in, however that makes sense, you're going to need to have a more powerful character instead of 4 normal characters, right? There's like a scale here. There's a line that goes through this thing and you're going to want to meet it, right? Cool. Now, you could also scale the adventure down. Maybe cut a few enemies or reduce damage or even tweak the traps a little bit is also an alternate idea, or you could even do both, honestly. If you're a level 8 character and there's like 15 goblins, maybe only do 6 goblins instead of 15, right? You can cut it in half and it'll make way more sense for 1 character than for 4. And there's no real like hard math here. It's kind of just like a gut feeling, right? You're going to want to eyeball it. If you find yourself struggling and about to die on a thing, maybe it's time to level up your character. You know what I'm saying? Example though, if it's built for 4 level 6 characters or 3 level 5 characters, 3, 5 characters, whatever, you could even do a level 14 solo character that might make sense. That is the ramp up we're talking about here. All right, in this book, it's got a thing called adventure features, all right? And it tells you basically you don't need to use these bad boys, right? So this system here in Mythic, it introduced a new Mythic lists item, right? Adventure features. And these are thematic tags and narrative trends that you can roll on when generating Mythic results. They're going to keep the Mythic prompts tethered to this adventure's specific world instead of spiraling into left field randomness like sometimes Mythic has a hand to do. So, the system for using Mythic was published Adventures introduces a new list item, Adventure Features. Alongside threads and characters, keep track of Adventure Features, which is anything special or unique that is part of this published adventure that could form an encounter. For instance, maybe it has adventure about vampire lords, you're going to put that down. Right, so keep in mind that the Adventure Feature list may also appear in the other lists, especially the characters list. If you have a random encounter with a ghoul, that ghoul may end up as an entry in the characters list as well as still being a possibility in the features list. And I know you're probably like, Turk, what the heck features list are we talking about? So we actually have it down here, right? Published adventures list sheet. You've got characters, you've got threads, and you've got adventure features. And again, if you want to get this thing so you can print it out and play with it, you can pick this Mythic module number 3 up, all right? It's really good stuff. And I know I'm reviewing Mythic module number 3 whenever like 65 just released or something the other week. You know what? Sometimes in magazines, there's just good stuff. There's no reason why this is a few months back. Doesn't mean it's not still good. And that's why we're talking about it today. All right, moving on. So we're gonna talk about scenes next, all right? Just like they do here in this magazine. Normally in Mythic, scenes structure your entire story, right? But I think here the module is already kind of going to give you structure for those scenes, and I mean structure in general. So what you're going to want to do is treat big narrative moments or just general location changes as new scenes, and you're going to let scenes be longer or more spread out. If you're exploring one wing of a dungeon, that could be a scene, right? Or if you're camping just before the boss fight, that is a new scene, right? So you're gonna have to try to rework your the way that you work scenes in your head a little bit, because every new scene, we're up in the chaos factor, we're rolling on our threads list, right? So you're gonna have to find a good time to be able to do those things that make sense in this adventure that you're running. Here's a toughie, the encounters and the locations, okay? Here's my 2 cents here. Just skim it, bro. You know what I mean? Because the encounters are pre-written, right? So you're going to want to just read enough to set the scene and then play it out using Mythic to react to what your character would do in this scene, and then read the next part to see what possible consequences are, right? You don't need to know what it is. I do think playing an adventure module will take more time. It's going to be a lot more reading ahead and reading behind, and you know what I mean? Because you can't prep and you can't just run on random like you would normally with Mythic. So you're going to have to go back and forth here. It's going to have a little bit of tailoring and a little bit of practice, because you don't want to read too far, but you have to read just enough. So you are going to get some spoilers, but that's okay, because it's about vibe over twist, right? You could just show up to a location and be like, all right, so what's going to happen here? You go, oh dang, these guys are going to show up. There's going to be enemies at this location. You know, you could even just roll to see how would my character appear in this scene. Would my character go stealthy? Yes or no? And then you roll it, right? I think they would, very likely. And then they might actually go stealthy up there. So even though you're spoiled by those enemies, you're still rolling to see what your character would do in this situation. It's almost like backwards playing. Like Mythic is the character instead of the GM. It's like the Mythic character emulator, if that makes any sense. All right, so now this is the meat and potatoes. This is the best part right here, okay? The best part about this is the random events, okay? You're gonna trim the fat off of the random events thing that you do in the normal Mythic, okay? So when you're using the Mythic with modules, you don't need all of Mythic's normal random event chaos, all right? What you do need is this beautiful little chart right over here. You've got adventure feature, NPC action, PC negative, PC positive, NPC positive. That's it. That's good, and I love that they made this extra little chart, because you could print this thing thing out, you've got it. It's all that you need, and it's sweet. So you could use your published adventure, right, as like a little bit of a focus table. You're going to cut out the remote events, the new NPCs, the threads, and the ambiguous events, because you don't need those. You're going to stick with the stuff that's already in the book. It's going to keep your narrative a little bit more tight while just adding a little bit of extra spice here and there to kind of keep things going. And remember to roll on your threads list that has all the fun stuff happening in the adventure module, the pre-written guy, yeah? So I think that this is its own kind of thing. Running a published module solo with Mythic isn't traditional solo play. It's not going to be easy either, and it isn't about traditional group play, all right? It's going to take time. It's going to be a little bit slower than a normal Mythic play, but it's not impossible. You can play without needing a group. You can play that module. This is a big time benefit. You can stay immersed in your vision and in the author's vision while still playing out the module. And you could use Mythic to shake up the details and even roll maybe what your character might do whenever the next thing happens. And you can still do all those skill checks, and you can play through the battles like you would with your favorite character. And you can say, oh, my character? Yeah, I did Curse of Strahd. My level 12 rogue did it. Like, you yourself. That's kind of a fun thing to say. So it's going to be a little bit slow, but it's going to be flavorful, and it's still going to be hella fun. All right. So if you've got that Dusty module that you've always wanted to play, but never ever had a group for, you can give solo Mythic a run. Guys, I'm telling you, this isn't completely impossible. But what I will say is if you want more details than just my general quick little video overview here of Mythic module number 3, you can pick it up for yourself in the Drive-Thru RPG link down in the dang old description. In this Mythic module 3, I should also see, since you watched all the way through this here video, it also has some other fun stuff. We're talking about dungeon region descriptors tables, which is very cool. We've also got some connectors tables, and we've also got some more meeting tables and stuff. There's a whole back section to this Mythic magazine that has some extra fun stuff in it. So just know that you're going to get your run for whatever you need, right? Randomized location crafting summary. Very cool stuff, right? We love Mythic Magazine. They're out here creating really fun stuff, and I feel like we should shine some more light on these Mythic magazines, especially for us solo players. So if you found this video helpful or entertaining, please do leave a like, my friends. Subscribe here to the Grouch Couch for solo play, actual play, role play, and cosplay, my friends. That's what we like to do around here. Thank you so much for joining us. Take a seat on the couch. I have been Turk. Roll initiative. Yes. Rolling that, weirdos. I don't have an outro. I don't know how to end video.